It's June of 1955. Dwight Eisenhower is President of the United States, the Korean War is over, and America is brimming with unbridled self-confidence. Color televisions are now being mass-produced, the flying car is a reality, and for most Americans, it seems, the future is now. A golden age of aviation is underway, fueled by wartime know-how and a roaring economy. At Cessna Aircraft, engineers are feverishly working on various aircraft like the 140 and the 170, but it is the type certificate numbered 3H10 that would make history. For the first and only time, Cessna Aircraft would produce a helicopter, the Cessna CH1. The Cessna CH1 is something of an enigma. It had several revolutionary design characteristics, such as the free-floating horizontal stabilizer, the L-shaped hinges which attach the main rotor blades to the hub, and to my knowledge, the only front-mounted engine in a helicopter. It also cruised faster than any of its contemporaries. It was the first helicopter to land at Pikes Peak at an altitude of 14,110 feet. It would then establish a world altitude record of 29,777 feet, beating the turbine-powered Alouette. Later, another Alouette would regain the title, but to this day the CH-1 holds the record for highest altitude for a reciprocating engine. It would also be the first helicopter certified for instrument flying. Yet, less than 50 aircraft would end up being sold, with the U.S. military acquiring roughly half of all aircraft. Finally, in 1962, production came to an end. Cessna took the extraordinary action of surrendering the type certificate and bought back any aircraft that it could find and scrapped them all. So come join me as we take a look at Cowan Simulation's take on the historic CH-1. Welcome back, everybody. Let's check out the exterior. Cowan Simulations added multiple click spots for this aircraft, and one of them allows us to check out that very unique forward engine placement of the engine. What we're looking at is the Continental version, which produced 270 horsepower. In yet another first, almost all the contemporary aircraft manufacturers were using Franklin or Lycoming engines, so this was yet another engineering hurdle that the Cessna team had to overcome. As we zoom in, I think the detailing looks pretty decent here. I mean, keep in mind this is obviously made for 2020, but I think they did a really good job of details that you wouldn't necessarily see. As we pan around to the side of the aircraft and zoom in, this is where I think a little bit of the visuals start to break down. Looks a little bit flat, not as much detailing, but once again, keep in mind that it is for 2020. As we kind of pan up to the very top here and check out the tail rotor, once again, I think they do a really good job of modeling the tail rotor. We see all the control pitch change links and everything else. So I think this is done really, really well. Moving forward, we're going to check out that very unique hub. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure how, I've got, over 10,000 hours in helicopters, and I'm not even sure how this hub even works. So what I would generally was looking for would be the rotating star, the stationary star, the pitch chain horns, but I think as I look at it now, it looks like the blade attachment bolt also acts as the blade hinge bolt, which is either brilliantly designed or overtly complicated. I'm not sure which. As we pan forward, we can see that they put some nice wear effects into the blade, which I really, really like. So this is just a really short walk around as there is no interactivity, but I think it holds up really, really well. Anyways, let's jump into the interior and take a look at that. All right, we are back in the aircraft, and as I mentioned before, there are multiple click spots in this aircraft, so let's go ahead and check out the engine one. You can't see my cursor, but I will point it out in post. But if you follow the line from the right anti-torque pedal right along the edge to the very front, you just click right there, and that brings the nose back onto the aircraft. Other things we can do is we can If you press the air vents, remove the doors, bring them back. If you press the lower part of the door, which I will highlight again, we can open the windows, which is very nice, and that works for both sides. I will mention that I believe the aircraft maintains its current state, so when you come back out, if you remove the doors will in fact be removed. We can also change the radio stack from the old to the new. It will remember that. And you can change and remove a couple of the instruments as well. We can remove the NDB, and we can remove the artificial horizon if you really want to go some old school flying, which of course reminds me, as a test pilot at Robinson, I went in inadvertent IMC and then attempted to fly instruments only to realize the helicopter I was flying was made on spec and had none. That was a very exciting day. All right, so we'll go ahead and bring those back. It also has an included checklist way down here. I have found using the EFB to be a little bit easier because you cannot, as you see, maneuver that one, and as you're trying to look at it, it just either is in that one position or it goes back. So it is exactly the same though in the EFB, so you don't need to feel like you're missing out if you're not using the included paper checklist. And then there's one final click spot that I know about, which is right here on this door, but I will let you, and so it's a little Easter egg, I will let you find that and see what it is later. All right, so let's just go ahead and run right into the start procedure, which is very, very easy on this aircraft. So the very first thing we want to do is we'll go ahead and bring out our EFB, aircraft checklist. We did the pre-flight. Let's do the startup. All right, and so I'm just going to try to hover on these things for an extra second so that you get a chance to see them. So the very first thing we want to do is battery switch to on. Generator switch remained off. Governor switch on the rotor head. One here is the landing light right here. You can see that moves the switch as well. This one is the governor. We want that in the off position, right where it's at. Idle switch clutch is off. That is right here in the off position. Throttle, I'm using the Virpil, off, which would be fully towards you that way. Fuel gauge switch. Let's move let me change camera positions. And we'll put the fuel gauge switch on. As you see, that brings in the fuel. Fuel valve in the on position. Fuel pump switch on. Ignition switch, both. Primer breaker, on, pushed in. Mixture, full rich. Primer switch, and then you actually have to hold this. So we'll just 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Looks good, and we will now start. Starts up pretty easily. Generator switch on. Fuel pump switch off. And then we'll just come to the very top. Temp, trim, landing, panel lights, position lights, rotating beacon, and radio. Just switch them all on. So with all that, radio switch. And I will point out just real quickly here, let me change views one more time, that in order to fly this aircraft, that trim switch, you really want to map this. I discovered as I was flying around there, like the very first time, I actually hit complete like physical stop on my Virpil, my Mongoose cyclic, and this aircraft flies extremely flat, horizontal. So it becomes very, very hard, honestly, to try to pick up a proper attitude reference on it. but you're definitely going to want to have that trim switch mapped out. So, and then from here, what we're going to want to do, we'll go up to the run-up section. We want the governor switch to on, which is this one right here. Governor switch on. Idle switch clutch. Press it. Low idle breaker, still in. Hasn't changed. And throttle, and you may just need to give it just a little bit. And as we look down at the lower right, we have a combined engine and rotor RPM gauge. So we're just going to give it just a little bit of throttle until it starts to catch, and then leave it. And then we're looking for it to get up to about 1,500 RPM and then stabilize afterwards at about 2,200. So I believe I read someplace, or I heard maybe from another content creator, that Cowan Simulations said that this is one of his easiest flight models, and that definitely is the case. I'll point out a couple things that it's very easy to notice. And, you know, as I do these first look or reviews, you know, I don't really add whether you should buy the aircraft or not. I think that's pretty individual. I just would like to point out some various factors. And so one of them is this is a very easy flight model. So if you're new to helicopters, I think this would be a great aircraft to start with, to be perfectly honest with you. All right, we're seeing the engine and the rotor RPM start to marry up, which is perfect. I'm just going to give it just a little bit more throttle. Get up to about 1,500 RPM. And after that, we want to slowly increase the throttle until we get about 22. It's not going to take much. Once again, I'm using my Virpil collective, but you could do this manually if you needed to. All right. That looks pretty good right there. We'll just come back and check the panel. And now we're just looking for temperatures and pressures. T's and P's, those are all in the green. That looks good. We're going to roll the throttle up to 2950, top of the green arc there, and we are ready to fly. And so that is the checklist, which I think is fairly simple to do. So let's get that all the way up. It's nice and slow, and it should stabilize right around 2950, just before we get to about 3,000. That little spot right there. Set our altimeter. Before I forget, right here at sea level, I am at TJIG, and this is a scenery pack, if you guys are all curious about that. Let's unpause my track IR. And let's go ahead and pick up. Oh, and one thing a viewer asked me to do is, let me come up here. They wanted to see my inputs, so I will have the input so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And then I noticed right around 14 inches of manifold pressure, we're just at 10 right there. Should start getting light on the skids. Notice the needle does bounce around a little bit. And now that I told you this is a nice, easy flight model, let's see if I can take off without embarrassing myself. That's right about there, should be good. Let's not go forward. So I thought we'd just go one time around the pattern, and I can kind of show you a little demonstration on actually how flat it is. pitch attitude, it's going to be very hard to adjust speeds. You're really going to have to do a lot of cross-referencing between your power settings, your airspeed, and your altimeter to see if you're climbing or descending. I have, of course, FSR, which I have turned on, but hopefully the blade slap has been turned down a lot. That's usually good to let me at least know if I'm descending, which is one of the reasons I use it. The other thing we can do is, we just set us right down here on the runway here. We can check out what it sounds like, in fact, with let's not drift. Whether you take the doors on or just open them up, you can definitely notice the difference. I prefer it with the door open, either cracked open or off. You can see it's the exact same sound. I think it actually sounds a little bit better. So, all right, let's go ahead and pick this back up. I think I read or heard that they used a Hiller aircraft, since none of these aircraft are, there is no flying model anymore. Let's get over to the center line. All right, and let's go ahead and take off. And so what I found the technique to do really is to, as you're looking at probably my input viewer, you're not going to see a whole lot, as I found it's easier just to use a little bit of trim to get yourself going. As you're putting in a little bit of forward cycling. And looking to accelerate to a good 40, 45 knots. Little half cyclic trim. And there you go. So I definitely like this airport pack, TGIG. It actually adds in some of the cruise lines. If you've ever flown around here, it actually is just a sunken ship in the water. So I think it looks fairly nice. Just straight ahead is going to be San Juan International, where I fly. And then just to the left is actually where that Hilton, that is where I stay when I'm staying in San Juan. Either I will cross this bridge right here below us, and that goes into Condado, which is a very nice part of San Juan, or as I turn around, orbit around the building here. I'll head down the road and head into Old San Juan. So right there, I have spent many a day at that pool and by those palm trees hanging out in a hammock. All right, so you can see I'm already up to like 90 knots, really moving fast, relatively for a helicopter. So I'm just giving myself a little bit of aft cyclic trim, or I will just literally physically run out of physical travel on my cycling. So one of the things I mentioned was it had a fairly easy flight model. And what I mean by that is there was no transition to effective transitional lift. There was no vibration. The aircraft didn't act like it was entering cleaner air. So I don't think that it's modeled, or if it is, it's very, very slight. I'd also say the aircraft is extremely stable, so I have both my hands off the aircraft right now. Which is, if any of you have ever flown an aircraft for real, it is much like rubbing your stomach, patting your head, and hopping on every other foot all simultaneously. So the fact that we're not making a whole lot of actual changes Makes this, I think, a very easy and docile aircraft to fly. You can see with this very unique design here, though, with engine forward mounted, and then it runs along the bottom into the transmission. You do have a little bit hard time seeing out the left-hand side, right? Their main rotor drive shaft is right there. Once again, we can try it with the door on, though it doesn't seem like it affects the sound when you're in flight. Interesting. That is something I did not know. Anyways, I have gotten on a very, very shallow approach here while I was busy yippity-yapping. Coming in this shallow, I think I've been yelling at my student. Literally giving yourself no out for if you have a engine failure. But an R22 hanging out there, or 44, 66, whatever it is. So as I mentioned before, in terms of the modeling, we should be hitting ETL right about here. Nothing, nice and smooth. No change required for our tail rotor, nothing. So, like I said, interesting. I think it's a nice, easy model. Let's go into a hover right here. I'm going to do one thing. And we will attempt a hovering auto. So we'll need to turn the governor off. And then I'll just see if we can get a hovering auto done. So we're going to need to roll the throttle off fairly rapidly. So 1, 2, 3.
I think you can do better than that.
Yeah, probably can. But I don't know if you guys noticed, no change in... Put the governor back on. No actual change in our heading, and a very large torque change like that should have resulted in a lot of pedal. And I literally had to have none. All right, brake back up. And we'll do a high performance takeoff, and we'll do a straight in auto. See how that works out for us. So once again, very benign flight modeling. No change in torque. It's lined up, and we'll just do it from the ground. So 1, 2, and 3. If I can. I'm pulling a lot of pedal in, a lot of torque, and I have to use very, very little pedal. So, a little trim to get us going. .45, 50 knots, and we'll start our climb out. And you can see just kind of, I'm already, if you look at the input viewer, I'm already almost at my max physical limit on my cyclic. So I have a hard time remembering I actually need to. And we're just going to do an abbreviated pattern here. I need to use trim. So I've done one auto rotation in this, and it did not go well. I think during the flare, I gained like, I don't know, 60 feet or something like that. It was crazy. Obviously, most of my flight time was spent. Obviously, I have a lot in the 22 and the 44, the A-Star, the 135. Those are extremely low inertia rotor systems, so you had to flare really hard. When I was in the Jet Ranger or the Long Ranger, the blades were really a lot heavier, and so it was a high inertia rotor system, so you didn't have to work nearly as hard. I'm not sure how these would be, so I'm just going to do the same thing again and see if I can, in fact, do a better job. So we'll do the exact same thing. We'll come down here, we will turn off the governor. If you don't, it will just try to hold on to the RPM the entire time. All right, so 1, 2, and 3, we're going to go ahead and lower the collective, split the engines, probably just a little bit fast here. I already hit 90 knots. See, you're starting to climb there. Really high and pull. All right, so
that was tricky.
Yeah, it was.
Landing overall.
Yeah, thank you. So interesting that oh, that's why. So I have the doors open. All right, so that is a quick first look at the Cowan Sim CH1. I hope you guys enjoyed what I've done. As the channel advances, I will continue to do more and more first reviews as they come out. Obviously, this is a little bit late. It came out in 2020. It came out again here in 2024. That was supported, and I didn't really get to it. But as the kind of channel progresses, I will be continuing to do other reviews on aircraft as they come out, and just kind of try to give you a sense of what they look like visually. Do they take advantage of the 2024 model? What is the flight dynamics on this one, right? This one, I think, once again, is very easy to use. You'll almost always see me probably do some hovering autos, some straight-in autos, and maybe any other maneuvers. I was going to maybe try to do a settling with power maneuver in this aircraft, but I don't think if they've modeled out, I could be wrong, but if they haven't modeled out kind of like torque, I'm sure they haven't really modeled out the settling with power. But once again, I appreciate everyone's support on this channel and on this journey. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I will catch you all in the next one. Take care for now. Bye.